for one more?
Well, there was like 800 right now. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you very much. Oh, these like, hey, Carlos gives one. Sorry. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Today is an historic day for the city of Chicago as we've passed the One Fair Wage Ordinance. This legislation is the culmination of years of advocacy and outreach by the One Fair Wage Coalition, restaurant workers, and advocates. The ordinance embodies Chicago's values of uplifting working people and addressing systemic inequities in the restaurant and hospitality industry, which in turn will create a better economic future for tip workers and our city. Over the next 5 years, the wages of tip workers such as servers, bartenders, bussers, and runners will increase 8% per year until it reaches parity with Chicago's standard hourly minimum wage of $15.80 per hour.
Yes.
By increasing wages, we can address the restaurant industry's staffing crisis, increase opportunities for youth employment, and create a safer and more welcoming working environment. We can also uplift communities and the Black and brown women and workers who make up much of this workforce, and many of the people who are standing in support with us today. These are heads of households and anchors of communities who are finally receiving a bit more of the respect and dignity that they deserve. In addition to this legislation, One Fair Wage, a national nonprofit organization, has committed to providing capacity building grants to small, women and minority-owned businesses to support this transition and restaurants that may be impacted. One Fair Wage also will continue to participate with restaurants in training and grants to help them build the infrastructure that's needed to manage this incredible historic day. Support for workers and working families has been the cornerstone of my administration. And I am so excited to see the first steps that we are building here today. Today, we are moving our city forward and building a brighter future for everyone. I want to thank the council for approving this legislation, and I look forward to working on the next steps with the One Fair Wage Coalition to create a better economic future for workers and Chicago as a whole. Thank you all very much. And with that, it is my true honor and really my privilege, someone who, though is cast as a freshman, certainly does not behave as a freshman. So with that, City Council's #1 draft pick, the Alderman of the 26th Ward, Alderman Fuentes.
Oh, what an honor it is to be here today. I want to thank... I don't know, there's some good draft picks around here. I want to thank our mayor. I want to thank our mayor for showing us what co-governance looks like. I want to thank him for being a man of his word, for being a man of movement, for living up to his commitments that he made on the campaign trail and not flinching. Because when we choose to run for office, and we do it for working families across the city of Chicago and communities that have historically been disinvested in, we have no time to wait. We don't have the luxury to flinch. And we don't have the luxury to say no. We have to show up. We have to show out. And we have to prove to the world that here in the city of Chicago, we stand with workers, we stand with working families, and we stand with communities, and the time of historical disinvestment comes to an end. I want to thank our floor leader, Carlos Ramirez Rosa, for not just being the greatest alderperson, but being our progressive dean and being the greatest mentor Because when progressive folks choose to run for office, it is because folks have paved the way for us.
That's right.
There was a time when the great alderman of the 35th Ward was here alone as a progressive elected official. We now have a progressive caucus of 19 members. I want to thank our chair of workforce development, Alderman Michael Rodriguez, for ensuring that when we brought this ordinance to the workforce development, that we would have the votes, we would have the support, and that he would be a part of championing such an important piece that would make a difference for women in the city of Chicago and for the over 57,000 young people that currently make up the hospitality industry. When we talk about building safer communities, we're talking about folks having a minimum wage.
That's right.
When we're talking about economic development and viability in our communities, we are talking about making sure we have a fair wage. Today, we have made history
Yes.
of what has been over 100 years of a sub-minimum wage has finally come to an end. And we are extremely excited to now join Pullman Porters in making history. And I want to thank the leadership of the Pullman Porters Museum for being here with us today and making history again. I want to thank our One Fair Wage Coalition, because when folks said no, when doors were slammed shut, you all kept moving. You all kept working. And you did so until we got here today. I want to thank Nataki for always showing up. I want to thank Saru for leading a national movement and making sure that a big city like the city of Chicago can now pave the way for great and big cities across the country.
That's right.
We will be the example of what it means to pay tipped workers a minimum wage with tips on top. It is a great honor to have been a part of this movement, and I'm looking forward to the work ahead. And I'm so excited to have been a part of this work and to continue to do work for the next couple of years with my colleague, our floor leader, our progressive dean. Please help me welcome 35th Ward Alderperson Carlos Ramirez Rosa.
Wow, there's been a lot of speeches today, so I'm not going to say much more. But because of the actions of this mayor, because of the actions of this council, 36 votes, 100,000 low-wage restaurant workers will get a raise in the city of Chicago. And when that first raise goes into effect in July of next year, and 5 years, we will end the subminimum wage, which for so long has kept people in poverty, which for so long has subjected women to sexual harassment because they're relying upon tips to make ends meet and to reach the minimum wage, that for so long has been the reason why low-wage restaurant workers are the victims of wage theft. My first job out of college, I worked in the office of Congressman Luis Gutierrez, and I worked as a congressional aide dealing with labor issues. And the number one complaint that we got from workers in the 4th Congressional District was that they were the victims of wage theft. And we had people that came into the office and said, my understanding is that if my tips don't get me to the full minimum wage, my employer is supposed to make up the difference. And they said, I asked my employer about that, and they said, what's your immigration status? Or I asked my employer about that, and the employer said, no, that's not the case. You just work off of tips and what you get. Or the employer would say, actually, I know you're lying to me. You know, you're underreporting what you got in tips. And so therefore, then I'm not going to make you whole.
Yeah.
I've had workers come and tell me that in Los Angeles, a one fair wage state, they were making significantly more working in the restaurant industry because they were getting a full minimum wage with tips on top. But when they came to the city of Chicago, they left the restaurant industry and went to go work in another sector because they could not make ends meet. So this mayor ran to remember the most vulnerable in our society, to stand up for the people of the city of Chicago, and that's exactly what we did today. So thank you so much, Mayor Brandon Johnson, because it cannot be understated. We all know how important the mayor of the city of Chicago is. We all know. And so this victory would not happen today, but for his perseverance, for his commitment to social and economic justice. because we know that a rising tide lifts all boats. And the research is clear. When we started working with the coalition and with the restaurant industry to craft this policy, we looked at the data. And the data said that one fair wage cities and states, big cities like Los Angeles, one of our peer cities, Midwestern cities like Minneapolis, they had the same or better restaurant industry growth. They had the same or better restaurant employment growth. And they had the same or more in tipping averages. So we know that this is good for restaurant workers. We know this is good for our small businesses and for our restaurant industry. And today, everyone in the city of Chicago won, thanks to Mayor Brandon Johnson, the One Fair Wage Coalition, and the progressive and liberal majority on the Chicago City Council. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. And next up, see, isn't our mayor so good? We have Alderman Mike Rodriguez, Chair of the Workforce Committee.
I'll say a couple things in Spanish, and then I'll spend about 20 minutes in English. That sound good? Mayor? No. Okay, I got the no. Brevemente en español. Hoy día pasamos la ordenanza de un salario justo. Un salario justo para personas que trabajan en nuestros restaurantes, la gran mayoría que son afroamericana, hispana, mujeres. Aquí estamos luchando para nuestras hermanas. Este esfuerzo fue un esfuerzo liderado por mujeres de nuestra comunidad afroamericana, hispana, que son nuestras mamás, hermanas, vecinas y líderes. Hoy día yo estoy bien orgulloso de estar al lado de Jesse Fuentes, un gran líder, que fue la principal en este esfuerzo, ¿verdad? Y es un gran placer batallar y luchar contigo, Jesse. It's very exciting to... You did that in Spanish too? Yeah. That was really good, man. That's the first time I saw that. That's what's up. All right. That's pretty good. I haven't seen that before. I'm serious. Today is an extremely good day. As the chair of the Workforce Development Committee, it's been my true passion to bring justice to working class people. And today is just the start. Today, we passed one fair wage. Tomorrow, we pass paid leave. We're going to go back for rideshare. We're going to keep on raising the wage for workers in the city of Chicago. But, Nataki, it was a couple years ago, right?
Yes.
Where myself, I think it was Congressman Garcia, and then State Representative, now Senator Selena Villanueva, we were serving tables over in Little Village, highlighting the plight of the subminimum wage. And I'm so proud to be with you.
Thank you.
The fact is, our effort today is about raising the wage, primarily for black and brown women who serve in the restaurant industry. I'm so proud that in the next couple of years, we will end that subminimum wage. We will start that this coming year. I'm very proud to be the chair of the Workforce Development Committee. We also have our vice chair here, Helu Gutierrez. Thank you for your leadership. Our great hermana, Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez, is with us here today as well. And I'm going to pass the mic over to my good friend, my new colleague, Mayor. He's another #1 draft pick. Give it up for Alderman Hall. Give it up.
Just real briefly, today is a day in which this is what unity looks like. This is when we put the dignity of Chicagoans in the forefront. And whether you start on 79th Street or Rush Street, we start together. And this is what we all dreamt of. This is what my grandfather dreamt of. This is what our auntie and our ancestors dreamt of, that there is no big I in little t, but it's a we. And so we're in this together, and we're glad together that everyone's dignity was at the forefront when we voted. This was a vote for dignity, for a better day, and a brighter tomorrow. God bless you. And so at this time, we are going to now hear from the voice of the people, the voice of the champions, none other than Saru. Saru, come on, clap your hands.
I'm shaking. I'm literally shaking. We have been at this for 22 years. 100 years of suffering by black and brown women since this subminimum wage was created right here in Chicago and spread around the country. 22 years since 9/11, when my brother Mamdou and I started this fight after 9/11. He worked at Windows on the World, the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center. And today, not only is the thing that started in Chicago ending in Chicago, but y'all beat New York City. But New York City's gonna follow Chicago's lead. For so long, 22 years, they told us, this is too hard. The National Restaurant Association is too powerful. Don't do it. Don't try it. You're being difficult. You women are being difficult. How many times did we hear that, Nataki?
1,000 times. 1,000.
We kept at it and we kept at it. Difficult or not difficult. They sent me and Nataki death threats. Yeah. They put my kids' pictures up on attack websites. They followed us around the country. They tried to shout us down. Even today.
Even today.
They tried to shout us down, but we kept at it. And there are a couple reasons why it finally happened here first. First of all, the rest of the country, and I travel all day, every day. I just flew in from Detroit this morning. Everywhere around the country, they are calling this the Chicago Miracle.
Yes.
They are calling it the Chicago Miracle because there is a miracle mayor. There is a miracle mayor who is not just a progressive, but an organizer.
Yes.
There is a miracle mayor who stands by his word, and that does not happen everywhere else. There is a miracle city council. There is a miracle floor leader. There is a miracle bill sponsor. There is a miracle on the committee that this passed through. There is a miracle coalition with Sharita from Women Employed and Jackie from SEIU and Adam from Arise and our friends David from the Pullman Museum and the Workers' Center for Racial Justice. They are miracles, and the biggest miracles of all are the workers who stood up for this for so long. Nataki, Barbara, Antoinette. We lost one of our folks this year. Christina Thurman we lost this year, but she was a fighter. All these women were fighters. This was not a David and Goliath fight. This was a Daniela and Derica and a Nataki versus Goliath fight. This was women of color against the most powerful trade lobby in the United States. And this win today, I am carrying this win to my next flight to Maryland. This is about to pass in Prince George's County, in Montgomery County, in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. In January, this is moving in 15 states, and on November 24 ballot, it is on the ballot in Michigan, Ohio, Arizona, and Massachusetts. This is moving in 15 states by next November because of what happened here in Chicago today. 6.4 million workers are going to get a raise because of what you started here in Chicago. That is a miracle. And I just have to say this is so incredible for 100,000 workers here and 6.4 million tipped workers across the country. But it is also so important not just because of the economy and raises and the ability for people to survive and feed their children and spend time with their children. All of those things, yes. And this is also about democracy. Because we have been asking this question for so long of our leadership and our people. Who gets to decide whether we end a legacy of slavery? Is it a corporate trade lobby? Who gets to decide how women of color are paid and treated? Is it a corporate trade lobby? Who gets to decide how we are paid and treated in the workplace? Is it a corporate lobby? Today, Chicago said, no, it is we, the people. We decide. I'm so sorry. I have to introduce the woman of the hour who fought for this for 15 years with us, but she was a restaurant worker member and then an organizer. She was on our board of directors. She was my boss. And then she became national lead organizer. Nataki Rhodes is the reason we are here today. Let's welcome here now.
It's a big day today in Chicago. Give it up for everybody. My name is Nataki Rhodes, and I was born and raised here in Chicago. I lived here 51 years, raised my son. I'm a former tip worker. I worked all over Chicago, and this is a horrific, historical day for me. I want to thank God. I want to thank all of my ancestors, Ida B. Webbs. I want to thank the Emmett Till family. I want to thank the Harriet Tubmans. I want to thank the Pullman Porters families for getting on TV, telling their stories on documentaries, just learning about the industry that I was working in, and that I understood that the lobbying and the forces that were standing against me. And I never understood that when I was working. But as I understood it and as I became a member and met Saru and met Mamdouh and understood the realification of this history, I knew that I had to be in this fight. And I never wavered. I went through 2 administrations, knocking on all kind of aldermen's doors. They wasn't listening to me. I'm so glad of the new city council. Give it up. Thank you, Alderman Jesse. I love Carlos. I've loved him from the first day I met him. Because he's always been a true organizer and always been a true friend to me, and I just really appreciate him. The first day I met Brandon Johnson, we met him through our one of our members, and we had a press conference in front of Capitol Grill, and we had just finished going in Capitol Grill and doing our protest, and Brandon Johnson came running down the street. And Carlos was right there. And they both did the press conference. And then the next time I got to meet him is when he was on his radio station. And I came on with SEIU Erica Blend. So he's not new to this fight. He's true to this fight. And I appreciate that. And he's a real West Side. Yes, and we love him on the South Side and all over Chicago. But really, truly, this has been a moment. I want to just thank the Pullman Museum. David is a true friend of mine as well. Dr. Hughes, for having that history in our community. It's so important to visit because your past lets you know where you're going in your future. And it's important for us to learn about our Black history so it can teach us and we can learn from that. And that way we can continue the movement and continue the civil rights movement. So I just thank the city council, Brandon Johnson and the Johnson family. I love you. Jesse, I love you. Saru, all of One Fair Wage, Barbara, everybody at One Fair Wage, all the workers, Xavier, all of them, I love you. And I love Chicago. And yes, I would like to bring up Jesse. He is an employer that believes in paying workers one fair wage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jesse Niguez, and I am the co-founder of Back of the Yards Coffee in the south side of Chicago. And I am so excited to be here today to celebrate this historic vote enacting one fair wage in the city of Chicago. Running a business is hard. It takes creativity, innovation, but at neighborhood businesses like ours, we serve more than just food and drinks. Local coffee shops and restaurants are a place to relax after a hard day's work. People get to know our staff and trust us to provide a safe space to meet with people, or a place for comfort when times are hard. This is why we do what we do, because we care about people. And the people we care about the most are the workers who make our businesses possible in the first place. We want to be able to support family-sustaining jobs where workers are treated with dignity, professionalism, and for too long, those of us who pay a direct wage consistent with this goal have been at a competitive disadvantage to restaurant companies that leverage the two-tiered subminimum wage. They do this to keep their costs low and prices artificially cheap. We've been paying at least $15 an hour since we opened up, before the minimum wage was at $15.80. But with this vote, the playing field will be leveled. Nice. And we all win. Workers, high road restaurants, the diners of this beautiful city, When we invest in working families, we support our communities and our local businesses. Thank you to everyone here for helping make this historic day a reality. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Sharita.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Sharita Ellens, and I am the president and CEO of Women Employed. I am also a very proud, born and raised Chicagoan, representing the South Side of Chicago in the mighty 8th Ward. So today's victory is a testament to the power of organizing. When the people are united, we will never be defeated. Today's victory was made possible by thousands of tipped workers across Chicago speaking up, using their voice, and speaking out and sticking together to fight for a full and fair wage. Shout out to worker leaders like Nataki Rhodes, who has been in this fight, as she said, for 15 years. Yes. Thank you, Nataki. That's a service, and people don't understand that that is a service, that is a sacrifice. So thank you for that. Today's victory is a result of our democracy. When our elected officials, Today's victory is a result of our democracy. When our elected leaders authentically represent the residents of Chicago, and they come together to improve the lives of some of the lowest paid, most marginalized workers in our city. Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you to the alderpersons Fuentes, Ramirez Rosa, Rodriguez, Yancey, and Hall for your sponsorship, for your championship, and for your bravery to bring this forward. Today's victory confirms the importance of the organizations across the city who work together in coalition. Nothing is done without coalition. Thank you to One Fair Wage, Our Revolution, the Worker Center for Racial Justice, Fight for 15, Shriver Center on Poverty Law, Arise, SEIU, and the many other groups who have worked together for years and years and years to see this day. This is a major step toward gender and racial justice in Chicago, chipping away at the persistent pay equity gap. And today's victory is a victory for economic justice. It's a victory for dignity. It's a victory for the soul of Chicago, especially for Black and Latinx women. Thank you.
Thank you again to all of our city council members that are here. I also want to make sure that we acknowledge a dear friend and brother of mine as we have come through the ranks of organizing. Alderman David Moore of the 17th Ward is here as well. Thank you. And Alderman David Moore, true fashion, he just blends in with everybody else. That's his humility is what I've always admired. Thank you, Alderman. So with that, we'll take some questions.
Craig Delamore, and we're tight on time, so we'll try to keep it to one question, and let's get through this quickly. Thank you.
Unfortunately,
on-topic questions to start, please, Craig.
Okay, then do I get one later? If it's not asked. Okay. How do you see the city playing a role in a statewide, the push for a statewide similarity here?
Yeah, it's a great question, Craig. As you just heard that there are states. First of all, let me just say congratulations again to the people of Chicago for just their commitment to working people, and as has been already articulated, Saru has indicated that there are multiple states around the region that are moving in this direction, and so we're not done yet, right? All right, so we'll continue to organize and work with our partners at the county level, at the state level, to continue to build an economy that stabilizes the workers of the city of Chicago, Cook County, and the state of Illinois. So we're not done yet.
Charlie.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
What do you want to say to the businesses like the ones that Alderman Sposato and Alderman Lee brought up that have a fear here that this could drive them over that edge and might force them to consider even other business models, such as eliminating servers, that kind of thing. Do you want to alleviate their fears here, or what do you want to say?
Yeah, look, it's a concern that's real. You know, I live in a ward that has, you know, bordering suburbs as well. You know, whether it's, you know, to the west of me in Oak Park and River Forest, or to the south of me in Berwyn and Cicero. You know, the important dynamic here that I don't want us to lose is that everyone had a seat at the table. They all did. And I've made a commitment to collaborate with all of our stakeholders, and that's why, you know, the progression has been situated the way it is, so that businesses have time to mature as this new legislation matures as well. And so, you know, we're not done, and that part of the work, and our alder has expressed this, Fuentes, that, you know, we get a chance to work through dynamics and continue to study the patterns so that, you know, we're doing right by everyone. Look, we want businesses to thrive. That's why City of Chicago, we're certainly well on our way to reviving our downtown. I believe we have the fastest growing downtown anywhere else in the country. We've just seen major investments take place with Invenergy, another expansion there, $1 billion investment from Google, a $233 million close in Fulton Market. I mean, I can go on and continue to brag about Chicago, but, you know, we're already bragging because we just passed one fair wage.
Eggs. AD. Craig Wall. Why are y'all here? I'm joking. Sarah Schulte. Alice. Gaynor. Justin.
Hey, Mayor. So I believe the final tally was 11 aldermen. They sent a letter, or I guess a complaint, to Attorney General yesterday, kind of alleging that the action taken on Wednesday to defer and publish this item broke the Open Meetings Act. They're asking that an opinion be shared or ruled that this was invalidates the action on Wednesday and also invalidates today's vote. You know, why are you confident that that action was legal and above board, and that this vote will hold?
Well, because we work within confines of the rules that the City Council established. Everything that we did fit within the framework that's permitted within the rules of governance. And I'm confident because the people of Chicago have already spoken. They believe that workers deserve a raise. Bringing people together to get that done is the hallmark of my administration. And we're going to continue to work within the confines and the guidelines that have been established by the rules. Everything that we did was within the framework that the rules have been established that the body voted on.
Mitchell. Tessa.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
Do you think there's a disconnect between the Biden administration resuming deportations of Venezuelans?
Are we still on topic?
Yeah. Are we? Yeah. On topic, please.
I don't have an off-topic question.
Okay. Aaron.
Well, actually, bring the mic up. There has been a lot of shouting today, so thank you. Go ahead.
You are introducing your first budget next week and still don't have permanent commissioners for CDPH, housing, DPD. Will we see any appointments before budget hearings start or during budget hearings? And how do you ensure that those budgets are what they need to be without a permanent commissioner?
Yeah, people are still working. Thank you for that question. People are still working in those various departments. Government hasn't stopped. You know, as far as appointments moving forward, that process is still what it is. As we continue to assess and evaluate individuals who want to serve the city of Chicago, who represent the hallmark of this administration, which is to be collaborative, competent, and compassionate, you know, we're going to identify people who speak to those values. But in the meantime, make no mistake about it, government is still operational.
There are some aldermen caught off guard by the NASCAR announcement this week, and that their expectation was there would be a full cost-benefit analysis or discussion before next year's deal was cemented. So what about the numbers from this year made it worth it for you to read?
Well, thank you for that question. There have been multiple conversations from my administration with various alders whose wards are impacted. You know, I'm very intentional about making sure that we are reaching out to people and having those conversations. You know, as far as, you know, what makes this event a worthwhile venture to go into another year is what I expressed a couple of days ago, that we got a better deal for the people of Chicago, where we have reduced the amount of time on the front end and the back end of this event for setup and takedown, as well as additional resources that will ultimately give us the ability to pay for some of the cost that occurs as a result of this, you know, event. I mean, look, we've seen the fact that it was, you know, one of the most well televised event, and that's in spite of the rain and, you know, many of the economic benefits that we experienced, you know, even with very extreme weather. It was still net positive. So we're going to continue to have those conversations, as I've committed to doing, to make sure that all of our events are speaking to who we are as a city, highlighting the best part of who we are, which is representative of all of our neighborhoods, and the downtown is included.
Craig Wall, we have about 5 minutes.
I get 5 minutes? Thank you.
No.
Two-part question for you, Mayor, if you could. From the DHS visit yesterday, I know your administration was part of this briefing. What did you learn from this, and how will that shape your trip down to the southern border? And if you can also just clarify, who's going to pay for that trip?
So, you know, it's important that City Council engages with the leadership of the Biden administration. It's something that I, again, have demonstrated as an executive that I'm not holding the ball, right? And so what was emphasized was the importance of having better coordination. Now, of course, as I've expressed repeatedly, this particular dynamic has created an incredible amount of strain on the city, and we cannot do it alone. And I've said that repeatedly. You know, as far as, you know, our next steps to do my job as mayor, whenever I leave the city of Chicago on behalf of the people of the city of Chicago, I'm doing my job, right? And so just know that the people of Chicago elected me to represent their interests, and and as we set the date for our assessment for our potential or likely border trip, all of that information will be made transparent, just like when I've gone to Washington, D.C., when I've gone to Springfield, I'm doing my job. I don't know if we have time, Craig. I'm sorry.
Quickly, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Yesterday, did Speaker Welch promise more migrant funding for Chicago during the veto session? And in general, do you think it's time the state starts looking at cuts elsewhere to provide more migrant grants to the city?
Well, what I've said repeatedly, that the shared sacrifice has to be equitably handled and addressed. And I've had this conversation with Speaker Welch, with the Senate President, with the governor, with the White House. I've had this conversation with our board president. You know, all of us have to step in and lean in to have a shared sacrifice in this dynamic. Look, as you know, I can't emphasize enough that I know that the strain that this has caused on our economy, and particularly within our black neighborhoods. You know, black people have had to share a lot and endure a lot. And that conversation that I had with the Speaker, the Senate President, the Governor, the Board President, the President of the United States, I'm constantly reminding them that the pressure that continues to be placed on the city of Chicago, and particularly Black Chicago, they have to help alleviate that. I'm sorry? I'm going to continue to have conversations to ensure that the sacrifices that are being made, that it is shared equitably.
Hi, Mayor. Sabrina from Channel 2.
Hey,
nice.
Sabrina. Is this your first time?
First time asking you a question.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
hey.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Let's see how this goes.
I'm actually from New York, so being here in the middle
I'm so
of
sorry
you beating
about that.
my place for the first time.
Welcome to the greatest freaking city in the world.
It's all right. I don't put ketchup on my hot dog anymore. Don't worry. My question is about some remarks that the governor made yesterday. He alluded to the fact that they might not be providing more funding to the city for migrant aid, help with housing. Have you had that conversation with him and talked about that specifically?
Well, what we've talked about, first of all, I'm grateful for the work that has been done. And again, the people of Chicago, we're being asked and quite frankly tasked with carrying the vast majority of this responsibility. I know that the leadership in the state of Illinois recognizes the importance of Chicago. And you know, the only thing that I can do is do my part. And I'm asking other folks to do their part. And as I've said multiple times, that the weight and the brunt of this sacrifice has been on Chicagoans, and I'm hearing loud and clear from our black residents in particular that they have high expectations, as they should. It's why making sure that we pass one fair wage was a priority of mine, because the vast majority of individuals are black and brown women who are doing the work. It's why we're going to bring Chicago home. The vast majority of people who are unhoused in this city are black people. You know, it's why we're committed to passing treatment, not trauma, and opening our mental health centers and making sure that we have an alternative response to mental health crises, because those who are overwhelmingly impacted by brutality are black people. And there's still more work to be done. You know, so I'm going to continue to do my part. I've expressed that the state has to do more. I've expressed that the federal government has to do more. And that's just where we are today. Thank you.
The last two questions, Gaynor.
Mayor, what is your backup plan for the base camps for asylum seekers as you have these time constraints? The temperatures are already going to be dropping this weekend. What are you going to do if you can't get those camps up in time to house people?
We've stood up a shelter, one new shelter every 8 days. One shelter every 8 days. Hundreds of buses have come since I've been mayor. You know, look, I appreciate the spirit of the question. This is not just simply about backup. This is about how we front load our efforts to respond to the crises. I've said this repeatedly. Everything is on the table. Brick and mortar, base camps, the state, the federal government. And so I'm going to continue to do the work that I've been charged to do, is to make sure that we're speaking to the demands that predate this crisis, and we're doing that, while at the same time doing everything in my power to find more brick and mortar space. I'm asking our business leaders to do this, our philanthropic leaders to find locations, our philanthropic community to lean in and support the mutual aid workers and work that's being done on the front lines. And, you know, we're still moving forward with the base camps. We still are.
Mayor, do you think there's a disconnect between the Biden administration resuming deportations of Venezuelans after they recently cited the dangerous conditions in their home country as part of the reason for extending temporary work authorization?
Foreign policy has caused a tremendous amount of destabilization. And so the sanctions, of course, that are causing the turmoil is being brought to us by the right-wing extremists in this country. That's right. The real disconnect is the fact that you have global population shifts that have been promulgated by the very failures of the Republican entities that want to score political points by attacking major cities where black and brown people live. That's the disconnect. The Republican Party can't even nominate their own leadership. Now, of course, I've said this multiple times. State, county, the federal government has to lean in and do more. And let's be very clear about what's happening here. That you have the destabilization of countries across the globe, which, by the way, are individuals that identify as Afro-Venezuelan or Afro-Colombian. You know, as we're talking about, you know, eliminating tipped wages for black and brown people, we're fighting the same system that doesn't humanize black people across the globe. And isn't it quite disturbing that you have an entire party that is more interested and dedicated to destabilizing black and brown people around the globe than actually passing a freaking budget to make sure that people can eat and have somewhere to live? That's the disconnect. In fact, the last thing that I'll say, at least on this, unless one more person has a question about this, is that I know we're going to get to the other side of this. And I know that the city of Chicago has been incredibly patient with my administration. Everyone knows it's not like I'm calling up relatives from another country saying, y'all want to come live with me? Our people know that, and they're frustrated. They're frustrated because, if I could be so bold, when the people of Chicago voted for me and voted for this progressive council, their hopes and aspirations could be realized. And now we have this crisis that has slowed that down. That's what people are frustrated about. If people weren't complaining, you could come to the conclusion that they didn't expect much from us. The real disconnect is that you have an unclean spirit that has captured the right-wing extremists in this country. And I call on them to dig deeper and lean on their faith. As Jesus said, who our neighbors really are. That's right. The one on the roadside. Those are our neighbors. And so we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we respond to the crisis that's right here in Chicago, that is the formulation of decades of disinvestment, while also making sure that we're pushing back on failed foreign policies that continue to destabilize countries across the globe. Thank you. We do this one. This is the last one.
Thank you, Mayor.
I got you.
It is actually kind of a follow-up to exactly what you're saying.
All right.
The poll that came out this week, polling people across the city along racial lines on whether Chicago should continue being a sanctuary city. Majority of people, voters said no. And the highest among those were among Latinos and blacks. And one of the reasons why is because of resources. So are you concerned that you are losing, voters on this? As this crisis continues, according to...
Thank you for the question. This is not about votes. This is the problem here. If people think that my job is solely based on how I can get the next vote, we'll get to that in the next 3 years. But I got you. Hold on a second. I just want to make sure that I don't want people to believe that the political decisions that the right wing in this country is making is going to force me to make a decision that will go against our values because I'm thinking about votes. Here's what I'm most concerned about. Our constituents and residents of the city of Chicago. I got it. My bigger concern is the fact that we have an alt-right movement, not just in this country, but around the globe, that continues to disrupt black and brown economies. Can I just offer up some context real quick? There are leaders in many of these countries that come from the same movement and struggle that Jesse and I and Carlos come from. People should look at the story of Her Excellency, the first black vice president in Colombia, who was not that much different than Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, who was pushing back against the government when they were coming into villages of which mostly black Afro-Colombians lived in, disrupting their local economy, causing them to lead movements to actually ultimately transform this government. And then when they got into power, the very forces that they fought are now mad at them and destabilizing their economies to force this massive population shift. And so this is about elevating the consciousness of the entire globe. My bigger concern is to make sure that those families, I'm going to speak directly to black people, that I've made a commitment to invest in the very communities that were disrupted by previous administrations, that have closed schools, that have closed mental health clinics, that have shut down public housing. Everything that I've done up to this point, while still handling this crisis, I have not stopped governing to make sure we're raising the wages, passing treatment, not trauma, bringing Chicago home. Apparently in the city of Chicago, you have a mayor that can walk and chew gum. Thank you all.
Thank you for stepping with us.